everyone, and welcome to the second Caregiver Conversations. If you're interested in checking out the first, you can check it out in the YouTube description below or on the CCYAN content video section. So for the second Caregiver Conversation, I'm really excited to have Irum here with me, and she'll be answering some of my questions about what it's been like to be a caregiver to me who's had IBD. And a fun fact about Irum is that I have known her entire life, which I think you're the only person who can claim that for, like somebody I've known your entire life for. Yeah. So, hello, Irum. So my first question, so a lot of the questions are going to follow my template questions. But we might pause for clarity or if you have anything to add. And yeah, this is a really informal, unscripted conversation. So yeah, let's dive right in. So my first question is, so what have you learned about IBD through this caregiver journey of yours? And if you can speak to a little bit about like maybe what you knew about it before versus after, or just anything you can tell us about IBD.
Okay, well, I believe you were diagnosed when I was in my teens, so that was really the first time I had heard about IBD. So I did not know anything before then. The question was, what have I learned about it? I guess I've learned that it affects so many different aspects of like your body and your life. So obviously your bowels or your gut, but so much more than that, including your skin or your emotions or what you might get up to in a day. And I guess that's very true of chronic illness broadly. So yeah, I guess that's what I've learned about IBD.
Yeah, almost the way you describe it almost makes it seem like a ghost that's always there with you.
Yeah.
Like in all aspects of your life, or they're just one very minute aspect.
Yeah. I think a holistic understanding of IBD is one that understands it in the context of like who like it becomes a part of your life as much as like personality in a way.
Yeah. So I guess now that you've sort of seen how it's affected me, turning that question to you, like how has having Crohn's as this sort of like ghost in our house affected you? And how has that journey of kind of seeing me go through IBD affect your own life? Because, if the viewer hasn't caught it yet, you're my younger sister. So if we were raised in the same household and you've seen me kind of go through, every sort of step of the journey of Crohn's.
I guess it has affected me in many ways. I think initially or primarily when you were or whenever you end up spending a lot of time in care, I think it affects like my schedule, in a very practical term. It affects where I am or what I'm up to. Of course, it's like emotionally very, I think, confusing. Maybe less so now, maybe more so earlier on. Just trying to understand like what's even happening or what you're going through. I think it's also taught me a lot about dealing with medical challenges or issues, or just learning how to navigate being there for someone and not necessarily knowing what's happening, but how can I still show up for someone in that way? And I think it's honestly made me a more patient person in like life more generally. I think there's like so much that isn't in your control when you're dealing with something like IBD. That's not in your control or your doctor's control, certainly not in my control. And that is, I think, an important life lesson about how life generally is not in our control. And in a weird way, yeah, maybe I've gotten really comfortable with that idea because of the experiences we've shared.
Yeah, I mean, you've said a lot there that I think I would be interested to unpack more, but especially in the context of what you said about being there for someone without really knowing what's going on because they don't even know what's going on, to someone who's maybe watching this and is maybe new to the journey. what is some practical tips or any sort of advice you can give about that might help them kind of come to terms with their own IBD journey or caregiver,
Practical tips. I think, okay, maybe I'm overthinking the use of practical in the sentence. I guess my biggest tips would all be around patience and forgiveness and trying to take the pressure off yourself. Yeah, I think it is, as you mentioned, like a journey in which there's so much uncertainty and a lot of questions. And I think, yeah, it's helpful to focus on what you can do. And sometimes what you can do is just take it easy, and let things happen. But I guess that's like really hard to do. So that's why we also need to give ourselves grace, and forgiveness.
It almost seems like the people who are giving support also need their own support. So where would you say for you, what were the sources of support that you tapped into so that afterwards you weren't kind of like drained or too like overwhelmed by this attempt to be patient and giving yourself?
Yeah, I think that it was a challenge, figuring out that balance between how can I show up for you and also show up for myself. Because I think a lot of times you don't even realize that you're doing that. And even if you realize it, you might have a lot of guilt around it. I think that's probably a caregiver experience that's pretty common. So what was the question?
Just like how did you find the support to navigate
yes.
supporting somebody else?
I mean, I guess, it wasn't just me and you. We had our parents. So having other people who are experiencing something that is similar to me was really helpful. Honestly, talking to you was probably helpful to some extent. I feel like there's some things that we could talk about, maybe some things that we couldn't. Just like hanging out with my friends. I mean, I think the nice part of it is like, yeah, you can go to people who have no idea what's happening and
Forget for a bit.
and kind of forget or kind of get to give your own, unlike with you or our family who have their own experience that they're bringing into the conversation. These people would have no experience or limited experience. Yeah, so I think just like relying on my networks, friends and family, and also just like doing stuff like my hobbies, listening to music, making art, walking around, walking in the park, reading a book, normal things, just regular life things.
Yeah, like just taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you think it's easy to talk about like IBD and to talk about, sometimes these really like heavy feelings that you might have had? Like just with friends and
I think it can be easy. I think it's easier to talk about it, if that makes sense. Like,
it's harder on
because-
yourself to not talk about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it is a big part of our lives. So it makes it easier to just acknowledge it, not everyone know what it is I'm talking about, and like make jokes about it. Yeah.
And you also mentioned just sort of how it's like affected your perspective on life things. So do you think that's, yeah, can you talk a little bit about like how you perceive, I guess, like your life outlook that might be kind of tied into, I don't know, kind of all of the things you've talked about, the patience and the self-care, like how does it, or maybe this is just like a, I don't know, a circular question in some sense, but I think you already talked about it. But yeah, if there's anything else you want to add, I don't know about this whole.
Yeah, I think you're asking what I've learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In some sort of roundabout way.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I did allude to, yes, this sense of like no control it is helpful to have that approach in many areas of life. But I think it's also taught me maybe the exact opposite, which is how much care and effort goes into taking care of yourself
Mhm.
and like showing up for yourself, and how that can be, yeah, a very like active, concerted effort, and B, that it's a collaborative effort that requires not just you, but the people around you and the systems around you. And that in your case, it was extreme. Like you're really seeing all of these people at work to try and like take care of a person. But I think that's true of health at all times, is that your health does not exist in isolation, and that it requires the community around you,
Mhm.
from the food you eat to the people you eat it with. So yeah, I guess that health is like an effort, constant effort.
Yeah, yeah, like it's not a glamorous one time I did a fancy workout thing, but like an everyday struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, our time's almost up. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Um, good luck. All the best. Yeah, I'm really grateful to be featured on this series. And
Well, I'm really grateful you're here for me, so
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a community. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Irum.